This is my real story and I need to share it because maybe someone out there will hear my voice and realize that not every smiling face is trustworthy. My name is Harper Steele, I'm 22 years old, and what I went through with my ex-boyfriend still sends chills down my spine every single night. I thought love was supposed to heal, to make you feel safe, to make you feel whole, but instead it became the weapon that almost destroyed me. When I first met him, he was the kind of boy every girl at college wanted: confident smile, charming words, the kind of presence that made a room spin. I was too naive, too desperate for affection, and too blind to see what he truly was. This story isn't just about heartbreak, it's about betrayal, obsession, and how something as pure as love can twist into something terrifying. Please listen carefully because I lived through this horror and I want you to stay until the end so you can understand the full depth of what happened to me. If you are new here, please subscribe, like, and share this channel because it helps more people hear these real stories. And remember, this story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. At first, being with him felt like the perfect dream. He was attentive. He'd bring me coffee before class, he'd walk me home at night, he'd whisper promises about a future that sounded too sweet to be true, and I believed him because when you're young and in love, you want to believe. But then small cracks began to show. He was controlling, asking who I was texting, why I didn't answer within seconds, why I wanted to spend time with my friends instead of him. At first I laughed it off, thought it was just his way of showing care, but slowly it grew darker. He didn't just want to know who I was with, he wanted to own every breath I took. I should have seen the signs. I should have run, but love can be a blinding mask. The fights became frequent, then violent, in ways that weren't always physical, but cut deeper. Words like knives, telling me I was nothing without him, that I would never find anyone else, that I should be grateful he chose me. The day I finally gathered the strength to break up with him, I thought I was freeing myself, but in reality, that was the moment the nightmare truly began. He didn't take the breakup like a normal person. Instead, he lingered around my apartment, left notes on my car windshield, sent endless messages from unknown numbers, and worse, sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone knocking softly on my window, only to find no one there. When I checked, I told myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew it was him. The obsession had grown into something else, something monstrous, and then strange things started happening. My phone would light up in the middle of the night with strange recordings, my own voice whispering in the dark when I had never recorded anything. Lights flickered in my apartment, shadows crawled along the walls, and sometimes I swore I could smell his cologne even though the doors were locked tight. It was as if he had found a way to slip inside without being seen, to haunt me in ways that went beyond the physical world. One night, I woke to find my mirror smeared with red lipstick, words scrawled across it that read, "You are still mine." I lived alone, the door was bolted, the window shut, and yet somehow someone had been inside. I was trembling, clutching my phone. But when I called the police, they found nothing, no forced entry, no fingerprints, no evidence at all. They looked at me with doubt in their eyes, as though I was crazy, as though this was just the leftover paranoia of a messy breakup. But I wasn't imagining it. I knew it was him. He had found some way to crawl deeper into my life than anyone ever could, a way that felt less human and more like something else. Friends stopped visiting me because they said the air in my apartment felt heavy, like someone unseen was always watching, and I knew they were right. I could feel his presence. Sometimes I'd even hear his voice, low and angry, whispering my name, Lynn. I was alone. The real terror began when I found a box outside my door. Inside was a collection of things I thought I had lost: a bracelet from high school, a stuffed animal from my childhood, even a photo of me sleeping that I had never seen before. He had been inside my world in ways I couldn't comprehend. How had he gotten in these things? How had he taken a picture of me like that without me waking up? My skin turned cold, my chest tightened, and for the first time I realized I wasn't just dealing with an obsessed ex-boyfriend, I was dealing with something far worse. Something he had become, or maybe something he had called into his life to help him torment me. Every night after that, my dreams turned violent. I'd see him standing at the foot of my bed, his eyes black, his smile too wide, whispering things I couldn't understand, and I wake up gasping, only to find scratches along my arms, as if unseen hands had clawed me. That was when I started to believe this wasn't just human obsession anymore. He had crossed the line, tapped into something dark, something unholy, and he was using it against me. My body was weak, my mind frayed, but I refused to let him win. Still, every night the feeling grew stronger. He was closer, nearer, and the walls of my world were cracking under his relentless obsession. And this, my friends, was only the beginning. The days after the box appeared outside my door blurred into a living nightmare, because no matter how tightly I locked my doors, how many times I checked my windows, how much I begged myself to stay calm. I knew I wasn't alone in my own home anymore, and the worst part was, I didn't know whether it was his physical presence or something darker that he had unleashed, but every inch of my apartment pulsed with an energy that didn't belong to me, it belonged to him or whatever he had become, and soon enough my life stopped being about living. It became about surviving minute by minute, heartbeat by heartbeat, waiting for the next move he would make. At first I thought maybe he was just watching me, following me, tormenting me to break me down, but then things escalated to a place I never thought possible. I'd wake in the middle of the night and find the oven turned on the gas, hissing low, filling the air with a suffocating smell, and when I'd run to shut it off, I'd hear laughter echo from the shadows. I'd leave my bedroom tidy and return to find all my drawers dumped onto the floor, clothes slashed, photos of me and my family shredded, and in the midst of the chaos his handwriting would appear scrawled on the walls in black marker, "You can't leave me." The police dismissed it again, saying maybe it was a prank, maybe I had left the oven on myself, but I knew better. This was his revenge, not just for leaving him, but for daring to live without him, and each act was a reminder that I belonged to him in ways I couldn't escape. I tried to run one weekend. I packed a small bag, fled to a friend's apartment across town, thinking maybe distance would save me, maybe if he couldn't find me I could breathe again. But that very night, as I lay on our couch trying to sleep, I woke to the same smell of cologne that had haunted me before, the same faint whispers tickling my ears, and when I stumbled into the bathroom to splash water on my face, the mirror was already fogged up as if someone had been breathing against it, and words appeared slowly across the glass like a hand was dragging invisible fingers across it. "You can't hide." I screamed. My friend rushed in, but the message vanished before she could see it, leaving me looking like the insane one. But I wasn't insane. I was being hunted by something that blurred the line between human and supernatural, and it wore the face of my ex-boyfriend. My friend begged me to go to my parents for safety, and I did, thinking surely in my childhood home with family around me I could be safe. But the first night there, as I tried to sleep in my old bedroom, I woke to the sound of my music box, the one I hadn't touched in years, playing slowly on its own, and when I lifted it I found a note folded inside. Even here, he had reached into the one place I thought untouchable, and now there was no refuge left for me. I started investigating, desperate to know what had happened to him, what he had done to gain this horrifying control, and what I learned made my blood freeze. Through whispered conversations and pieced together rumors, I discovered that after I left him he had visited someone a woman people in town called a witch, though others said she was just someone who practiced the old arts, someone who could open doors between worlds better left shut, and that he had begged her for a way to bind me to him forever. The idea made me sick, but it explained everything: the strange happenings, the feeling of being watched even when I was alone, the physical scratches that appeared on my body after dreams. He had tied me to him with something unnatural, and now he was using it to torment me from anywhere, at any time. I knew then that this wasn't just about an ex who couldn't move on. This was about a deal he had made, and the thing that terrified me most was that whatever power he was wielding wasn't just hurting me, it was changing him, twisting him into something less human with every passing day. The proof came one night when I saw him with my own eyes again. I had gone to the grocery store late, trying to distract myself with normalcy, but as I carried the bags to my car I caught sight of him leaning against a lamppost, staring at me. His eyes weren't the same, they were too dark, too hollow, and his smile stretched unnaturally across his face, almost inhuman. My body froze, and before I could scream, the lights around the parking lot flickered and died, plunging everything into darkness except for him glowing faintly under the sickly yellow light of the single working bulb above his head. "You thought you could leave me," he said, but his voice didn't sound right. It carried layers, echoes, as though something else was speaking through him. I dropped my bags and ran, but the sound of his footsteps echoed all around me, faster, closer, until I finally slammed my door shut and locked it behind me. I thought I was safe, but then I heard his voice whisper right behind me, though no one was there, "You'll never escape, Harper, you're already mine." At that moment I realized escape wasn't an option anymore. He had bound me, he had found me wherever I went, and the only way to survive wasn't to hide, it was to fight. But fighting someone who wasn't entirely human anymore, someone who had tapped into forces darker than anything I understood, meant I would need help, and that help would come from the very place he had gone to in the first place. If he had sought power from the so-called witch, then maybe she was the only one who could undo what he had done, but going to her also meant risking myself, because if she had given him this power, she could just as easily destroy me. Still, I had no choice. Every night was getting worse, the whispers louder, the scratches deeper, the nightmares more vivid. And I knew if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't make it out alive, and so shaking, terrified, and more desperate than I had ever been in my life, I set out to find the woman who had given my ex-boyfriend the power to haunt me and to beg her to take it back before it was too late. The night I decided to search for her, I drove until the roads thinned into woods and shadows, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they ached because every instinct in my body told me this was a mistake, that going toward the very source of his power was like walking willingly into the lion's den. But I had run out of choices. My ex-boyfriend, or whatever he had become, was consuming me piece by piece, and if I didn't break free soon, I would end up nothing more than a hollow shell tied to him forever. So when the dirt road finally ended at a crooked cabin half buried in the trees with smoke rising faintly from its chimney, I killed the engine and stepped out the night alive with the hum of cicadas and the unsettling feeling that the forest itself was listening. The woman who opened the door when I knocked looked older than time, her face carved with deep lines, her gray hair falling wild over her shoulders, but her eyes, sharp and green, saw right through me, and before I even spoke she whispered, "You're here because of him." My throat went dry, but I nodded and she let me in without another word, the air inside thick with the scent of herbs, candle wax, and something metallic like old blood. I didn't know where to start, but she seemed to already know my story because as I stammered about the things I'd experienced, the voices, the scratches, the shadows, she only shook her head and muttered, "He begged for a binding and he paid for it in ways you cannot imagine, but the cord between you is tied too tight, too deep. Now it feeds him as much as it weakens you." My stomach twisted and I asked the question that had been choking me for weeks. "Can you break it?" For a moment she said nothing, only stirred something in a clay bowl that smelled bitter. Then finally she looked at me with a sorrowful kind of pity and said, "Yes, but breaking such a tie always has a cost. You cannot sever what was made in blood without spilling more blood." Her words chilled me to the bone, and though she didn't say whose blood would be required, I had a sinking feeling I already knew. That night she showed me things I wish I could unsee. She led me to a mirror covered in black cloth, muttering incantations as she pulled it away, and when I looked, I didn't see my own reflection. I saw him. My ex stood in a room I didn't recognize, staring at me through the glass, his skin pale and stretched tight over his face, his eyes darker than before, like pits that had no bottom. "You came to her," he hissed, and his voice made the glass vibrate, the candles around us flickering violently. I stumbled back, but the witch only pressed her hand to the mirror, whispering words in a tongue I didn't understand, and for a moment his face distorted, twisting in fury, but before he vanished he grinned and said, "She won't save you, you're already mine." The mirror cracked down the middle, splintering into spiderweb fractures, and I knew he wasn't just watching anymore, he was connected, pulling closer. The witch told me the truth, and the truth that made my knees nearly buckle beneath me. When he came to her begging for a spell to bind me, she had warned him it wasn't love he was asking for, it was possession. And possession always carried consequences. He had agreed anyway, cutting his palm and mine without me knowing. He had stolen something of mine, once a strand of hair, a drop of blood from a cut, and with those pieces he had tied me to him forever. But in doing so, he had also tied himself to something else, something dark that demanded payment in pieces of his soul. "He's no longer entirely himself," she said, her voice heavy, "and soon there won't be anything human left of him at all." My heart pounded, because if he lost his humanity completely, what would become of me, bound as tightly as I was? Would I be dragged into whatever he was turning into? The thought alone made me sick. I begged her again, "Please just tell me how to break it," and after a long pause she gave me the ritual, a circle of salt fire, my own blood offered in defiance of the bond, and above all, I would have to face him directly inside the circle, weakening him long enough for her spell to sever the cord. The idea of standing face to face with him again, knowing what he had become, nearly made me collapse in terror. But she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life as his shadow, and when he's gone, you'll go too." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin, every flicker of candlelight reminding me that the clock was ticking, that the next encounter might be my last chance to escape. But he didn't give me the luxury of choosing when to act. As dawn broke, I stepped outside for air, and there he was standing at the edge of the trees watching me. His presence made the air heavy, suffocating, and the witch hissed from inside, "It's too soon, he knows what we're trying to do." Before I could move, he stepped forward, and the shadows seemed to bend toward him. The birds went silent, and in that silence he said, "Come back to me, Harper, and I'll make it stop. Fight me, and I'll tear everything you Love apart, my blood ran cold because I knew he wasn't bluffing already. My family had been pulled into his torment once, and I couldn't let it happen again. That was the moment I decided there was no turning back. I would fight him even if it meant risking my life because I couldn't let him keep consuming me. The witch began preparing the circle, chanting, burning herbs that filled the air with acrid smoke, and as the sun dipped behind the trees, I stepped into the ring of salt, clutching the small silver dagger she had pressed into my palm, my hands trembling, my throat dry, waiting for him to come. And when he did, stepping out of the darkness with a smile that didn't belong to any human, I knew this was it, the moment that would either free me forever or end me completely. I will never forget the way the air changed when he crossed into the circle, like the forest itself held its breath, every leaf and branch trembling as if afraid of what was about to unfold in my body. Felt like it was being ripped between terror and fury because standing there in front of me wasn't the boy I had once loved. It wasn't even the man who had betrayed me. It was something else. His skin stretched, too thin, veins blackened and crawling like vines under his flesh, his eyes glowing faintly as though lit from inside by some fire that wasn't human, and yet his voice, when he spoke, still carried that twisted echo of the boy who once held my hand under starlight, whispering promises he never kept. "Why are you fighting me, Harper?" he purred, stepping closer, though the salt hissed and spat under his boots. "You were mine from the beginning. Don't you remember how good it felt to belong?" My grip on the silver dagger tightened, my hands slick with sweat, and I spat the words I had been choking on for months. "I never belonged to you. You stole me. You chained me." His smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp, too many, and in that instant the witch's voice rose behind me, chanting her words, weaving through the smoke and fire, pulling the bond between us taut like a burning thread. He howled, clutching his chest as the invisible cord between us shimmered in the air, a pulsing line of red light that connected his heart to mine. The pain was immediate and unbearable. It felt like knives dragging through my veins, my body screaming as if I were being torn apart, and I dropped to my knees, gasping, but the witch shouted over the roar in my ears, "Fight him! Harper, cut him out of you. Spill your blood to sever his." So with everything in me, I raised the dagger and dragged it across my palm, hot blood spilling onto the dirt inside the circle, sizzling as it hit the salt. The cord flared brighter, angrier, and he screamed, not in pain but in rage, lunging toward me, his face splitting, the monster inside him tearing free at last, claws bursting from his fingers, his voice a guttural snarl as he shrieked, "If I can't have you, no one will." The fire around the circle roared higher, the earth trembling, and for one terrifying second I thought he would break through, that the ritual would fail, that I would die screaming with him, bound to my soul forever. But then the witch's final words tore through the night, sharp and absolute: "By blood given and blood denied, the bond is broken." The cord snapped with a sound like shattering glass, a shockwave blasting through the circle and knocking me flat onto my back. When I lifted my head, I saw him writhing at the edge of the saw, his body convulsing, flesh peeling away like paper, burning in fire until there was nothing left but ash and smoke, his scream echoing into the night before dissolving into silence. The bond inside me vanished instantly, the weight, the constant drain, the whispers, all gone, leaving me empty, raw, but finally free. Tears poured down my face, and I didn't even realize I was sobbing until the witch knelt beside me, pressing a cloth to my bleeding hand, whispering, "It's done. He cannot touch you now." I wanted to believe her, but part of me still expected to wake up in the nightmare to hear his voice in my head again. But as dawn crept over the trees, painting the sky pink and gold, I felt something I hadn't in months, peace. When I left the cabin that morning, I looked back only once at the place where the ritual had burned the ground, black salt and ash still smoldering in the dirt, and I promised myself I would never ever let someone take that kind of power over me again. My scars, the one on my hand, the invisible ones etched into my soul, would never fully fade, but they were proof I had survived, proof I had fought back and won. Still, sometimes at night when the world is quiet, I wonder if he's truly gone, if some piece of him lingers in the shadows, watching, waiting, because love twisted into obsession never really dies, it just finds new ways to haunt you. Thank you so much for watching this horror story video. If you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying real-life stories. Your support means everything and keeps me going. See you in the next story if you dare.